Hello and welcome to the Closer's Playbook, a podcast about selling your services as a freelancer. I'm Pete Beber here with my co-host Tyler.
How's it going, Pete?
Doing good.
Good.
Good to sit down
another
back
week?
to back.
Yeah.
So we were talking a little bit. We've talked in the past, if you heard some of our episodes, a lot about discovery, and that's really asking good quality questions. It's going to help you understand what is important to your prospect, to your customer, that you can really laser in on. So we want to talk today about how do you even figure out, especially if you're just starting out as a freelancer, or if you're thinking of going into a specific niche because maybe you see something there. How do we know what to ask? So we were talking a little bit about ways that things that we've done when going into a new market or, working with a specific type of customer. And so Tyler, kick us off. What's one way that one source that you use for getting good questions to ask?
I think the first and probably obvious one is experience. And if you're new to an industry or if you're new to freelancing, new to sales, whatever that is, this is going to be the hard one because obviously you need to talk to people. But anytime you talk to somebody in your field or you you listen to a podcast or any of those things, pay attention to the questions they're asking and pay attention in your own conversations to the questions that get the best answers, meaning the most informative, right? The things that help you further the process. So the first thing, it's kind of obvious, but experience, and pay attention when you're talking to people, pay attention to, when you're listening to people in that industry talk.
Yeah.
So
at bats is big, right? And I think you'll start hopefully the rest of these sources too will help give you a good baseline to build that experience if you don't have it. A big part when I've gone into a new market, worked with a new industry is interview people.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be a formal interview, but it can be. It could be, cold outreach. Hey, I'm working with these types. I'm not soliciting your business. Just want to learn a little bit more about the industry, right? About what issues you have, and you could do that if you already have a customer that's in the industry that you want to work with. Just say, hey, I want to sit down and really dive deep with you. I want to understand more about your business. I want to understand more of things that you'd like to see changed within your business or improved. What are some pain points? Kind of everything's on the table, right? Even if you think I can't solve it, maybe I know somebody who does. I just want to get a really good understanding. And you sit down and you ask those questions. You ask, great. So walk me through your day. Where are some areas that you have issues? It could be a large company. You say, all right, well, outside of your department, what are some other things that happen? What is your owner, CEO, president, whatever? What do they really care about?
Sure.
What are they hoping to solve?
It's funny you mentioned this one because just as you've been telling us this, I realized I did this for one of my friends has his own business, more of a local style business, and I went to see him the other day and have a new client in the same industry and was picking his brain a little bit and just indirectly he didn't know I was doing it. I don't think he knew why I was doing it, but I don't even know if he knew I was doing it. So but it's interesting you say that. That's
so it could be neighbors. It could be friends. It could be, maybe you're at a get-together, post-COVID, obviously. Maybe you're at a get-together and you meet somebody who's in that industry. Yesterday, I was at the gym and just a few of us were sitting down after class and we were talking about a number of things. Oh, what do you do? And just so happened that one of the guys was in an industry that I work with, and we just started saying oh, this is kind of a pain over here. Tell me a little bit more about that. Yeah. And then after a while he goes, what do you do? I actually help companies in your industry do X, Y, Z. He's like, oh, wait a second. Those are the things that I just told you. I was like, yeah. And he goes, can I get your card? Whatever. He goes, let me connect you with the right person. And he's like, honestly, this what you just talked about could potentially solve some things for me, but I think it'll even be more helpful for this department. Sure. And so we exchanged information, and
So
there's a lead.
And turning that into how do you know, he just told you all of his problems. He just told you the things he struggles with. He told you, what he's seen in his industry. So the next client that you go talk to, you can have those, are you having problems with this? Have you seen this? And you can structure your questions around those things that he just told you.
Yeah. Here's what I hear from others in your industry. Yeah. That right there shows you work and talk with other people in the industry. And I have this all the time. I will talk to people in these specific industries that are very related to each other, and I'll say, hey, here's a problem we're solving for others. Is this a problem that you have? And I hear all the time, you nailed it. Mm-hmm. That is a huge problem for us. I didn't even think this was something that we could talk about with you. Oh, well, here's how we're, helping these other companies. Show an interest in other people, right? And ask them about, what do you do? Oh, tell me more about it, and just, it doesn't have to be formal, and you never know who you're going to run into, who might be in an industry that's interesting for you to work with or that you already do. And just ask them a few questions, and they'll tell you. People like to tell you about their problems, I feel like.
100%.
So that would definitely be an area to go to, and just asking like, oh, why is that a problem? Mm-hmm. Right? What would it mean if you didn't have that problem anymore?
Yep.
These are some things we could do.
Yep. Cool. So the next one I wanted to touch on, actually I did it yesterday and Thursday. Well, this is Saturday, by the way. Is looking at competitors. And so I'm developing a new sales page for my SEO company. I'm offering a new service, and I wasn't exactly sure how to pitch it. I wasn't sure what problems I should be addressing. So I found a competitor, and they have a service that's different enough that I'm not stealing, I'm not plagiarizing or anything, but it gave me a question, or it gave me an idea into how their sales page was structured, so that and what questions it addressed. I was able to look at their FAQ section. I was able to look at their bullet points and their pop-ups and the questions that they were addressing on their page that maybe I wouldn't have even known to address those things. And so knowing what I know about the industry and about the service that I want to provide, and knowing what they're addressing on theirs, I was able to put together a pretty nice sales page. Well, I think it's a pretty nice sales page. I don't know. We'll find out.
Well, but, you can use, so like we often don't look at our competitors, but I know our competitors look at us. And so you can use, because we like to work from the customer, but it's a really good point in that you can see, are my competitors asking things that I'm not? Are they being asked things that I'm not? And you can use that to confirm, like verify with people, hey, is this you just took like that FAQ, right? You go, hey, is this a problem in your business?
Right. There you go.
And you can confirm, right? So you could use that list of FAQs. You could use the marketing material on that page. I think it's a really good approach.
And it's easy, I mean, honestly, it's low hanging fruit. Yeah. So it's you
Google your type of business and just go look at some pages.
Right.
That's it.
Yep. Exactly. Cool. What else do you want to cover?
So another area, there's a lot of associations, right? Okay. So there's associations for just about every job out there. Yep. And they can be a great source of information. They can be a great source for finding customers, quite honestly, because a lot of associations, if you find their page, they'll say, here are our members. Because those associations are often trying to find sponsors for their association. So you'll also see competitors potentially, or you'll see other companies that are in the industry who have the budget to sponsor, right? So there's a couple different things here. You can use that to see what companies could I potentially reach out to because they're a part of this association. What is important to this association? Oftentimes associations will tell you why they exist.
Yeah.
So one example that I've used in my work is Lean Construction Institute.
Okay.
And they talk about project man, I've got a lot of associations I've looked at, but I'm pretty certain it's like, hey, productivity is a big piece for lean construction, right? How do we be lean? Well, the more productive you are, the less costs you have.
Sure.
And so then that association is talking about productivity.
So are you getting this information from their website?
Yeah.
Are you going to their meetings? Are you...
Well, it depends. So a lot of times they're closed. You have to be like a sponsor to be able to get in. So it depends. For me, because the company I work for has a good reputation, good name, it's a little bit easier for me to just go in.
The door's
and
open.
Not to the association, but to go talk to those companies to say, hey, why are you a part of this association? What are you getting out of it? Or because you could say, hey, I'm thinking about sponsoring.
Yeah, okay.
Right? Or you could say, hey, this is really interesting. I'm curious if this is something that maybe I could, participate in. But you could go and you could ask. Sometimes they'll even put the contacts at those customers who are like their members. Or they'll at least list out board members for the association. Oftentimes they could be potential customers with those companies that are a part of it. And so you can use that association, be like, all right, let's see. A lot of them will say, here's our upcoming calendar, because they're soliciting companies to join. They're soliciting sponsors. So they're going to say, hey, here's our calendar for the month, right? If you care about these things, you should join. Well, now you've got maybe they're talking about, specific techniques that can be used. Maybe they're talking about marketing. Maybe.
Sure.
Well, now you can go through their calendar and say, what events are they having? What topics are they talking about? That's what's important.
Have you ever joined for like a month or two?
I've joined for a year. I've joined some associations. It kind of depends on does it really make sense for me to be a part of it? And that you have to figure out. Part of that is the cost. Part of that is what do they do? How engaged is the
community?
Yeah. Now sometimes they'll have you either have to be a sponsor or the target audience to join. And if you're not going to sponsor, but sometimes they have like lower level sponsorship memberships. So it's like, it could be a freelancer who goes in and is like, well,
is it
I
almost
service
like
this
levels?
industry. Kind of.
Okay.
It depends on the association, but sometimes they'll allow a limited number of sales reps to be a part of an association.
It makes sense. Otherwise, you have 150 sales reps out of 175 people.
Right. So you don't want that. So associations can be a great source. You just Google, whatever industry it is and association, and you'll probably find a dozen.
Cool. All right.
So
well, let's move on. The last one is interesting because it's forums, and I'm going to let you talk about it because I stay out of forums like the plague. And so it's really interesting to hear you say that this is a good source forum.
Well, I'll say that if you are in, if it sort of goes along with associations a little bit, it kind of goes along with interviewing people and competitors, right? So you could find like a subreddit on Reddit let's say you work with roofers. There's probably a subreddit with roofers. Sure. And they're probably going to talk about it. And there's probably other forums out there that are specific to roofers. They're probably going to be, bitching about companies they've worked with. They're probably going to be, asking questions of like, hey, how did you do X? Hey, I'm in this area and this is an issue. How do you find good? They'll ask each other a lot of questions.
Okay.
And then then people will answer and you can start to see. Now, am I jumping into I'm just sort of a lurker on forums, and it's probably it's not always going to be the best place.
So you're not name calling and throwing out all sorts of derogatory nonsense.
Some people for building a reputation will just answer questions on the forum. So if you do have experience, if you've been working with customers, maybe that's a way that you can get some new business. We're more focused on what questions to ask, right? So if you start to see here's a question somebody asked and it has a ton of responses, that might be a good area to laser in on.
I've heard this. People talk about doing this technique on Quora. And so, but yeah,
Quora,
I've never tried it myself.
Reddit, there's probably a million places you could go. And it can be, I sort of like Glance. I don't use it for everything, and some of those forums can get out of control. But you know, if it's an industry specific one, it could be a good source of here's the problem. People will talk about their problems.
Sure. Makes sense. Yeah.
So yeah, I think those are a few areas that things that you can use. I'm liking the look at your competitor pages a little bit more than before we had the conversation. I think it can be a good place to confirm. But
I think the thing that ties together all of these is when you're talking to people in the industry or you're looking at things, just pay attention to the things that are already out there, because there's a lot of information that you can gather before you have your first conversation. But then every conversation thereafter about that topic or about that industry can gain you more information, better questions.
Yeah. I'll give you a bonus.
There, okay.
If you're talking to a public company, so these are going to be bigger companies, but they're public. They put out annual reports in 10Ks, and in a 10K, they typically have a business section which describes their business in pretty good detail, and then they have a risks section. And that risks.
Clarify what a 10K is, because I don't think
it's
everybody's
an annual filing that publicly traded companies have to file with the SEC. It's for investors. It even gives they typically do here's selected financials, so you can see sort of the health of the business a little bit. But it'll tell they go through, here's our business. There's a lot of boilerplate stuff in there too. But you go on and you look at them, it'll tell you things like oftentimes how many employees they have. Might tell you, depending on their business, how many vehicles they have, how many locations they have, what type of revenue they have per location, what type of profit. They'll go through all these sorts of things. And if you look at the business section and the risks section, risks or risk factors, there's a lot of great information in there. Sometimes they even talk about competitive landscape.
A lot of times they're super detailed. And that one you touched on it briefly, but it's only for public companies. Private companies don't have to do that. But.
Yeah. So, but it can be a really good source of information. If I know I'm going to work with a publicly traded company, I already know who my target accounts are. If they're publicly traded, I go and I get this document, and I'll sometimes look at multiple, and I'm just going to scan through those two sections, generally speaking. And it can be. The last episode we talked about, our proposals being, how you present, having processes. Understanding a customer's business is really important.
Just be part of your homework before you.
And it lets you drill in, and you can tie back and say, oh, when I was reading your annual report, it seemed like your executive team really cares about X, Y, and Z.
It helps you be landscaper 2, not
referencing that last episode we had.
If you haven't listened to it, go listen now.
What is it? Like and subscribe, is that what we're supposed to say?
Like and subscribe and all that stuff. Just go listen. I haven't
cared. Let's just... hopefully it helps.
Yeah, exactly.
But, so I would say those are some good areas that you can look. Oh, and if you're not working with a publicly traded company, finding a publicly traded company in the industry or publicly traded companies, they'll all generally have the same sort of issues. Right. So I left that out, but those could be good sources of finding out which questions are going to be really helpful for you to ask when you're putting together your discovery questions.
Yeah, and on the private, if you're targeting a private company, obviously you're going to have a hard time knowing revenue and stuff like that. So maybe grab the reports from 5 of their competitors that are public.
I'll tell you that if you know I'll give you an example. I've been looking a lot at self-storage. There's 2 big players in the self-storage industry, and that's public storage and extra space storage. They will tell you how many square feet they have, how many locations they have, how much revenue they have, what their costs are. Well, you can break that down. Those are very good businesses, by the way. They're pretty healthy. You could break that down if you're like, I'm going to go work with self-storage businesses. Well, those 2 companies own a small part of that space. There are a lot of small shops when it comes to self-storage. And so you could go in and you could say, this is almost like the goal is the public storage, the extra space storage. You could say, hey, here's the type of revenue per square foot that a lot of companies are trying to get to. Well, you can take that directly from the 2 10Ks of the 2 publicly traded companies. that are out there.
And then you can almost work off like X number of square footage. Well, public storage has this many. So if you scale down,
look at the locations that they're in,
you can get an
where they're
educated
growing.
guess.
Yeah. And you can even see there was a car wash business that we were working with, and they tell you like, here's what we're looking for when we're acquiring another car wash or building from the ground up. So now, I mean, they give you all of this information.
It's there
that you can use, and these are like the most successful companies in the industry. So now you can take that, and that can influence the questions you're asking to the smaller players that you might be working with.
Yeah. So asking educated questions is not hard. Sometimes it just takes a little effort. So
yeah,
I think that's a good spot to end on.
Let's wrap it up.
All right. Well, everybody, talk to you next week. And like we said, go listen to some of our older episodes.
Yeah.
We'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks for listening.
Every week. Bye.